Johnny likes to keep his car looking sharp. Johnny likes to keep himself looking sharp too. When it comes to keeping his car in good running condition, here's one thing Johnny would never do: pour sand into the radiator. When it comes to keeping himself in good running condition, here's one thing Johnny may not be so sure about. Yet, no matter how sharp an automobile looks on the outside, what's under the hood makes the difference.
How many miles do you think this new car will be good for in its lifetime? 10,000 miles? 50,000? With good care, it ought to run for at least 100,000 miles. What'll make it last? Washing and polishing it? Cleaning up the upholstery? Well, this will make it look good, but the thing that will really count is how well you take care of what's under the hood, the engine and other vital parts of the car, the quality of the gasoline you use in your engine, how frequently you change the oil, whether or not you keep the right amount of water in the radiator. Now, how much mileage do you think you're good for? If you take good care of yourself, there's a chance you can run for at least 70 years. But if you put smoke from these under your hood, you'll be doing something just as foolish and harmful to yourself as you would be doing to this car by pouring sand in the radiator or water down the oil pipe. How does cigarette smoking cut down your mileage? For some answers, let's call on two classroom teachers who have helped their pupils discover a great deal about the harmful effects of cigarette smoking on health. First, meet Mr. Sid Wilson.
I think we could see the vital parts of the car a little better if we use this strip-away model. The most important part, of course, is the engine. It's made up of cylinders, pistons, valves, etc., which make it possible for air, gasoline, and sparks to combine in continuous explosive combustions. Sparks in this model are supplied by the battery here. Some of the other important parts of the car are the water pump, the distributor, the transmission, and the differential. Let me flip a switch here and show you how this model works. If anything goes wrong with one of these vital parts, the car won't run. Now let's look at some of the vital parts that make our bodies run. Here on this chart we can see some of them: the lungs, the heart, the liver, and the stomach. If we don't take care of these parts, our bodies may not run, and it's pretty hard to find replacements. In many ways, the human body is like an automobile. Take breathing, for instance. Air enters through the nose or the mouth, passes down the trachea into the bronchial tubes, and out into the lungs, where oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide. And then this is exhaled back the other way. Let's take a look at the breathing system on the automobile here, see how it works. Air enters through the air filter. Underneath the air filter is the carburetor. Let's remove the filter so you can see. Inside the carburetor, air is mixed with gasoline. The mixture passes into the cylinders of the engine, where sparks from the spark plugs cause it to burn. And then the waste gases, including carbon monoxide, move out through the exhaust pipe. Let's talk about air filters for just a moment. Here we have a new automobile air filter. Notice how nice and clean it is. It's made up of just folded paper. Let's take a look at this old dirty filter here, this used one. What do you suppose this black stuff is here? This is some of the carbon and bits of burned things found in the air. What would happen if the filter didn't stop these particles from going into the engine? They would clog up the carburetor, and your car wouldn't have any get up and go. Do you realize that you take this very same stuff into your bodies when you breathe? Our bodies have a way of cleaning out particles such as these, which we'll discuss a little later. But it's clear we wouldn't want to take in any more of these than we can handle. For instance, this bug spray here. you wouldn't want to take that into your body. Or if you were using this sander here, you'd probably want to use this face mask to prevent the particles from getting into your lungs. And if I ask you to spray your nose and throat with this paint spray, you'd think that I was crazy. But what about these? What about the poisons found in these? Medical science has proved that there are many poisons found in these cigarettes, yet people that you and I know light up every day and fill their lungs with cigarette smoke. A lot of people buy the kind with filters on them with the hope that the filter will take out the particles, but it just doesn't work. Of course, when the air filter in your car gets an overload, all you have to do is throw it away and get a new one. But when your body's defenses break down, then what?
No, you can't very well replace your filter. And yet millions of Americans light up and fill their lungs with cigarette smoke every day, from just a few cigarettes to one or more packs. Why do people smoke? To relax? To be sociable? To feel big? Why do teenagers smoke? Let's hear from a few.
Well, I guess I smoke because most of the kids in my crowd smoke. I don't want to be a square. It's the thing to do. You know, when you fool around a hamburger joint, or go to a dance, or just drive around. It gives you something to do.
When I started smoking, I didn't like it too well, but it made me feel grown up, so I kept on. Anyway, both my parents smoke, so I guess it's okay.
Well, these are all reasons, but are they very good ones? What's so harmful about the clean-looking white smoke from a cigarette? Let's ask another teacher, Mr. Jim Fryer, to introduce us to a heavy smoker who may be able to help us get some of the facts.
I'd like you to meet Smoky Sam. My high school students learn quite a bit by keeping him busy, collecting cigarette smoke in his glass lung. Sam is made up of a jar, partly filled with some water, and some tubes. One tube holds the burning cigarette, and the others direct the smoke into the water inside of the jar. Most of the smoke gets trapped in the water. Some of it bubbles up into the air above the water, and the water is being siphoned slowly out onto the lower area, drawing some of the air in through these tubes into this jar. This keeps Sam smoking constantly. Uh-oh, it looks as if Sam needs a little help here. There. What's in this smoke that Sam is inhaling into his glass lung? First of all, cigarette smoke contains harmful, irritating gases that result from the burning of the cigarette. One of these harmful gases, carbon monoxide, comes out of the exhaust pipe of your car. In addition to gases, there are millions of tiny solid and liquid particles in cigarette smoke. When a person inhales, many of these particles stay in the mouth, the air passages, and the lungs. Let's see what's inside Smoky Sam. Notice that this white tube shapes something like the bronchial tubes inside your body as they branch off of the trachea. See how stained the tube is. Some of the particles in the smoke have bumped against this crooked tube, have cooled, and left a deposit. This is cigarette tar. Let's follow the smoke into the jar. It's hard to see into the jar because the particles in the cigarette smoke are building up a stain on the jar. Notice these dark spots on the side. These are drops of cigarette tar too, formed when certain particles in the hot cigarette smoke hits the cool glass and condense. This is what goes on in the breathing passageways of the smoker. Now, how much smoking has Sam done in his lifetime? He smoked exactly 20 cigarettes, 1 pack. Now let's compare Smoky Sam with this clear bottle. This is the way Smoky Sam looked 20 cigarettes ago, before he started smoking. What a difference. Not one stain or speck of tar. Do you know what this is? 1 cup of cigarette tar. The amount of tar that Smoky Sam will take into a system if he keeps on smoking 20 cigarettes per day for 1 year. This is what a person takes into his mouth, air passages, and lungs over a period of 1 year. Quite a bit for the body to keep cleaning out, isn't it? For every additional year that a smoker continues to smoke 1 pack a day, he will take in an additional cup. In 4 years, he will have exposed himself to 1 quart. How many years to the gallon? This stuff won't help your mileage any. But what's in cigarette tar? Scientists have found over 200 different chemicals. Some are harmless, others are poisonous. Some cause cancer. One powerful chemical found in the leaves of tobacco is nicotine. We hear a lot about nicotine, but what does it do to us? Nicotine is a poison. In fact, it is sometimes used in insecticide sprays. What does it do to the smoker? Let's see if we can discover this by watching what it does to the goldfish. For that, we're going to take some of the water out of Smoky Sam a minute and give this water to the goldfish that we have in this container. Notice the color of this water. It is quite dirty after having smoked just these 20 cigarettes. Now we'll choose one of these goldfish and place it in this container. Watch both of the goldfish together. The one in the container with the smoky water is picking up nicotine. He doesn't like this, and after a short period of time, the nicotine will enter his bloodstream, pass throughout his body, and finally kill him. We'll remove him now so he doesn't die, but if we did leave him there, he would die over a short period of time. What does nicotine do to us? When the smoke comes into the human body, passes into the lung area, it comes into the heart and finally out through the blood vessels and throughout the entire body. Here is where it comes in contact with the nervous system. And nicotine has a definite effect on our nervous system. The first effect on a new smoker is dizziness and sometimes sickness. But the more a person smokes, the more his nervous system begins to depend on nicotine like a big crutch. Over a period of time, he develops more and more of a craving for cigarettes until this can happen.
How's that for being relaxed? While it takes years to build up a good case of smokers' nerves, here are some side effects that young smokers don't have to wait too long to experience. That sluggish feeling when the homework stacks up and the evening drags on. That flat taste that food has, and the bad taste that stays with you between meals. Stains on teeth and fingers. Even if the color matches, it may not be the one that you want for a lifetime. The special way that all your clothes will smell, no matter how sharp you look or how well groomed you are. If I advertised that the stuff in this bottle would make you happy, popular, and grown up, would you buy it? Of course you would. But suppose you knew that this same stuff was guaranteed to make you nervous, discolor your teeth, and make your clothes smell, might even shorten your life. Would you still buy it? Well, then what about this product? Think about that for a while. We've discovered some of the facts about cigarette smoking and health. What are some of the more serious effects? Let's call on Mr. Wilson again.
One of the most serious effects of cigarette smoking is upon our lungs. Let's take a look again at the lungs here in this model of the human body. If we could examine a piece of lung tissue under a microscope, it would look something like this drawing. The lung is made up of millions of tiny air sacs arranged in clusters, like grapes. Notice the tubes leading to these air sacs. These are the tiny branches of the bronchial tubes. When we breathe, the tubes carry air into the air sacs, and as we exhale, the tubes carry the air away from the air sacs. Let me show you how a healthy air sac works. If I blow into this, you'll notice it expands, and when I exhale, the air simply escapes. Now let's see how the entire lung works. Here I have a lung, or at least it's a piece of rubber cushion I got out of the junkyard, and it works quite a bit like a lung. Let's say that these are the air sacs, and when I breathe in, they expand, and when I exhale, the air is forced out of them. But what would happen if these air sacs got filled with grease like this? They wouldn't work very well, would they? And when we smoke, we get tars from cigarettes into our lungs, just like this grease. Do you think then they'd work as well? Remember, the automobile has an air filter that controls this sort of overload, but what defenses does the body have? Let's take a look at this chart here and we'll see. Here we see the trachea, where the air comes in, down the bronchial tubes, and into these fine divisions called the bronchioles. This other chart will show us a cross-section of one of these bronchioles. Some of the things that we can see here are cells like this that produce mucus that bathe the lining here to help to protect it. Other cells here have short hair-like projections called cilia. These cilia wave back and forth, helping to brush out particles that get into the lungs. But what happens in a smoker? In a smoker, the mucus that is traveling up like this as the cilia beat doesn't go up and out quite as well, because as the smoker continues to smoke, these cilia shorten, slow down, and eventually die. That allows this mucus that's laden with tobacco tars and smoke to slide back down into the lungs, blocking off these bronchial tubes. Now let's see what happens if the little tubes get plugged up and the sacs are full of air. Then if the smoker develops a cough while this is plugged up, this is what happens. As more and more of these air sacs are destroyed, the person gets shorter and shorter of breath. We call this condition emphysema. This shortness of breath can prevent a person from continuing his everyday activities, and almost all people who get emphysema are smokers.
We can see that the chemicals in cigarette tar can slow down and kill cilia cells. How do chemicals affect cell growth? Let's look at some plants for the answer. The other day, I placed some of this chemical on the side of this plant, and you'll notice that it is bent over in that direction. The other plant is still straight. It has been untreated. I'm going to remove these two plants and place them on a board so we can see them more easily. And you can definitely see, and looking at those, that this one is bent. The reason for this is the cells in this side, where the chemical was placed, have grown a lot faster than the cells on the other side, thus causing the plant to bend over. This is what the normal plant would look like. Are there chemicals in cigarette tar? Of course there are. There are hundreds of them. Some of them can cause a harmful change in the growth of cells that we call cancer. Let's see how this works. Here are 5 steps of the development of cancer in the human. In the first few, we see the lining of the bronchial tube and the cilia cells, also mucus cells. Behind them, below them, there are these small cells called basement cells. This is normal tissue. As a person develops a cancer caused by irritations of smoke passing through this passageway, we find the basement cells increase in number. As this continues, we find that the cilia and mucus cells in the third step have completely gone, and we find the tissue below increasing in size. On the fourth step, we see that the cells below now are growing so fast that they're going into the tissue below. And on the fifth step, in which we could probably indicate here that cancer has developed, we see cells that now could break loose and move through the bloodstream to other parts of the body. This is a picture, then, of the 5 steps of cancer as it develops in the human. Let's look at a real lung. Here is what can finally happen to an individual who has smoked heavily. Look at the dark part here. Do you expect that the cilia in this person's air passages were working very well? What happened to the tars in the cigarette smoke? It's obvious that they've been trapped here in the lung. The light part of this lung is the cancer. Does cancer give any warning? A knock in the engine? Unfortunately, a person doesn't notice any sign until it's too late. Out of every 100 people who are operated on for lung cancer, only 5 survive beyond a few years. How's that for mileage?
Speeding down the highway in a powerful car is one of the pleasures of modern living. When people stay within a safe speed limit, they have a good chance of arriving where they're going. Drivers who travel at reckless speeds, however, have a good chance of smashing up. What about high-speed smokers? If you knew that people who smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day for at least 20 years have a good chance of smashing up with lung cancer, would you want to be a high-speed smoker? According to the American Cancer Society, the major cause of lung cancer is cigarette smoking. How can you help protect yourself against this killer disease? Don't smoke. If you don't become a smoker, you have a very good chance of never getting lung cancer. How do your chances compare with those who do decide to become smokers? The light smoker, the person who smokes about 5 cigarettes a day, is taking 10 times the risk you would be taking. The person who smokes 1 or more packs a day, the heavy smoker, is taking 25 to 30 times the risk. The facts about cigarette smoking and lung cancer are pretty serious, but there are even more ways in which cigarette smoking can cut down your mileage. An important part of your engine is the heart. During your lifetime, your heart will beat 2 to 3 billion times, pumping about 4 quarts of blood per minute through almost 100,000 miles of blood vessels that supply food and oxygen to all the cells of your body. How important it is to keep the heart and the blood vessels in good condition. Let's see how cigarette smoking puts a heavy strain on the heart and the circulatory system.
First of all, the heart has to have lots of oxygen to do its important work. The smoker can cheat his heart of oxygen in several ways. Carbon monoxide in cigarette smoke crowds out oxygen in the bloodstream. Then, as air sacs are destroyed in the lungs can't take in as much oxygen. As tiny vessels in the sacs break down, there are fewer roads for the blood to travel through, and the heart is made to work even harder. Now let me show you some ways in which nicotine in cigarette smoke hurts the heart and blood vessels. With most persons who smoke 1 or 2 cigarettes, smoking makes the heart beat faster than the normal 70 beats per minute. It's just like stepping on the gas pedal and making the needle on your speedometer climb. And this increase can cause the heart to beat faster for as long as 10 to 20 minutes after the person finishes smoking. Here's another effect. With most people, smoking 1 or 2 cigarettes causes the blood pressure to rise. And the blood pressure can stay up for as long as 30 minutes after the cigarette has been smoked. All of this races the motor and makes the heart work harder. What about the chain smoker? Do you think his heart and blood pressure have a chance to get back to normal between smokes? Also, when a person smokes 2 cigarettes, the flow to the fingers and toes slows down. The temperature of the skin of the toes and fingers goes down 4 or 5 degrees and stays down for as long as an hour after smoking. Let me show you how this happens. Here I have a make-believe part of the circulatory system. The bulb is the heart, the tubes are the blood vessels, and the colored water here will be the blood. Now I'll make the rubber heart work by squeezing it. Notice the flow of the blood. What happens when I press on the tube a little bit? It slows down, doesn't it? The tube is narrower, and the blood can't flow through as easily. The nicotine in the cigarette smoke makes the walls of the tiny blood vessels constrict, slowing down the flow of blood. This makes the temperature drop, and the toes and the fingers get colder. What does the heart do about it? It tries to pump faster and harder to force the blood through. As you can see, this places an additional strain on the heart. Cigarette smoking can cause these changes in your circulatory systems. Today, heart disease is the #1 killer of both men and women in the United States. Twice as many smokers as non-smokers die from heart disease. Do you want to rev up your motor unnecessarily? When your automobile engine breaks down, you can replace it, but you can't replace your heart.
We've talked about the effects that cigarette smoking has on the nerves and the lungs and the heart, but this isn't all. Cigarette smoking is associated with damage to other parts of the body. Let's remove the hood of this model here and see what some of these other effects are. According to doctors, people who smoke cigarettes have an increased danger of dying from these diseases. First, there's cancer of the larynx. Lung cancer, emphysema, and other serious damage to the lungs is a possibility. Then there's injury to the heart, liver disease, cancer of the esophagus, stomach ulcers, and down here under the intestines we see the bladder, and this might be subject to bladder cancer. Let's see, is there anything I've missed? Oh yes, the brain. Since this poor fellow didn't use his brain very well when he started smoking, we might as well get rid of that too. Well, I guess that about does it. It's not much sense having a good-looking chassis if there's nothing under the hood.
How much mileage for you? One of these days, you're going to make a choice, whether to be a high-speed, reckless driver or a safe-speed, careful driver. Whether it's more important to feel popular and grown up today or to safeguard your health and happiness for the future. Now that medical science has shown the hazards of cigarette smoking, a lot of smokers would like to quit before it's too late, but it's pretty hard to do. The best time to stop is before you start. Do you want to get the most mileage out of your life? Remember, what's under the hood makes the difference.